I got introduced to a guy who's got a band in Tulsa. You probably heard of it, the Hanson Brothers.
Yeah.
Taylor Hanson, right? So
they made one really, really good song.
Really good, but they got
everyone
a lot
knows.
of good ones.
Everyone
now.
knows the one song, but they're still touring. I would love to interview them one day. I'd love to interview them.
Oh my God, Taylor is
now
he's turned into one of my really good friends.
Amazing.
So he's had this vision, and I also, weirdly enough, had a vision to put in a community garden on some of the Bama properties somewhere, because I felt like it was so important, because I wanted our team members to learn where the food actually comes from.
Right.
Because so many of our younger people that come in now have no idea. They live in very impoverished neighborhoods. There's no way to get food. They're in food deserts, etc. So we constructed this great big plot of land about a half a mile from one of our facilities, and we had the whole thing laid out. And one of my plant managers came to me at the time, and he said, Paula, I'm all for this vision, but I just want to tell you, we're trying to do what we can to keep these kinds of things away from the factory, like bugs and rodents and little minor things that come in from gardens. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it.
Yeah.
Never thought of it. So my VP of HR and I were going out to kind of going to different fundraisers, and we went to this thing called New Leaf. Sorry, it was called New Leaf. It was a big organization in Tulsa, where the handicapped folks do the flowers. They make the flowers, and they pot them, and then they grow them, and then they actually put them together in baskets, and they sell them, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so we went to this fundraiser, and I got introduced to the guy who was director of New Leaf, and he happened to be sitting with Taylor Hanson. And so, they're all like, well, what are you guys doing here? And we hadn't seen you at these, this fundraiser before. And I'm like, I really want to put in a garden, but I don't want to do it. I can't do it at the factory now. I've got to abandon that plan. And Taylor looks at me like, what? And Kevin looks at me like, what? We've been trying to figure out a place we could put in a community garden. See, now there you go again.
Timing.
And I'm like, how would I have ever met these two people? I never, ever. But we were out searching for a way that we could hook up with one of these not-for-profits and put in a garden. So we started talking. We started meeting. We ended up buying a 5-acre plot of land in North Tulsa, where the food desert is. We're launching this thing. It's a $10 million project. It's incredible. In 2 years, I hired Kevin away from New Leaf. Taylor comes out now. We do fundraisers. We're raising all this money. We're teaching people about aquaponic gardening. We have volunteers coming out. We're starting grow beds. This thing has exploded. Yeah. And we get calls all the time for people that want to come out, see the grow beds. Can we come out and bring our kindergartners out? So now we're starting to talk about an education building. So now I've got to raise $3 or $4 more million. But it's this is what we do, right? And so now one of our major charities in Bama is Food on the Move, we call it. And I would say probably 70% of my team members at Bama go out there at least once a week and volunteer, or they go out on a weekend, or they take one of their days off and go out there and they just plant, and they're learning about the grow beds, and they're learning about these aquaponic gardens. And I'll tell you, the other day I burst out into tears, honestly, because we were out there we just had a pod delivered from the aquaponic garden guys. And we've had this aquaponic garden running over at this middle school. A lot of very low-income kids there and a lot of dropouts. I got introduced to this boy running the aquaponic garden. And Kevin said, I just want you to have, Joe or whatever his name was, I'm sorry, I can't remember it, take you around and tell you about the garden and what he's doing and this and that and this and that. I'm thinking this guy's like some Nobel scientist, the way he's talking about all this stuff in here and what happens in the fish down at the bottom, and when they do this and this creates a sulfate or a phosphate or this, and I'm looking at him going, wow, look at you. And we're walking around the garden. I'm like, oh, honey, this is the greatest thing. I love this so much. Thank you for volunteering. I love it, love it. So I come out and I'm walking down with Taylor and Kevin Harper, and they start telling me about this kid. And they're like, he's in school right now because of the garden. Yeah. And I said, well, what was going on? He's like, he's got his grandmother's raising him. There's 14 kids in the house. There's no male figure. Yeah. He's come out there. He was going to drop out. He was already being recruited by the gangs. He was done with school. Just done. These are the kinds of kids that we want learning about gardening, about agriculture, about farming, about it's a job. It's a job you can do. Anyone can do it. And these aquaponic gardens can be set up in schools. They can be set up in apartment complexes. Yeah. If we can engage the kids and the people around to what's going on in inside this little pod, it's incredible. Like it's an all-encompassing one food system that could literally feed like families with fish and then with all these fresh vegetables. Yeah. And this kid is like, I was like bawling after Taylor and Kevin told me about this kid. They're like, he was going to drop out of Monroe. Yeah. And I said, see, guys, this is why we're here.
Yeah, that exact example.
This is why we're here.
Because there's so many more kids like that, right?
There's just tons of them, and we just want to keep building it and helping them, And so it inspires us to keep going, because there's so many of these things needed in those communities.
Yeah.